And you've just heard Joyce and Joanne by Xan Tyler, which is taken from Xan's new album, Holding Up Half the Sky. And to hear all about it, I'm delighted to be joined by Xan now. Hello, Xan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Good to see you. And before we talk about the album, can you tell us about that track, Joyce and Joanne?
Yeah, so Joanne was my dad's aunt, and he told me this story years ago, and it really stayed with me. So Joanne ran a dance school in South London, and she lived with, and she ran it with Joyce, and she also lived with Joyce, and they did everything together. They were, inseparable their whole adult lives. And of course, tongues would wag, but there was never any sort of real, they were just never celebrated really as a couple. And I just found that really sad,
Yeah.
that they, times were different, obviously. For whatever reason, they felt they couldn't. I don't think the family would have coped with it or whatever. So even within their family, they weren't a couple. And I just thought that was sad, So yeah, I just felt they deserved a song. And I had been wanting to write that song for years. And it just was obviously really perfect with the themes of the album being about female empowerment and women's stories and things like that. So yeah, it just fitted.
Well, you mentioned the album there, Holding Up Half the Sky. And can you tell us a bit about it and the themes that are on it?
Yeah, so I don't know, I sort of started out in a bit of a sort of reflective, I've sort of, hit that age, I guess, where you sort of new chapter, but also you're quite reflective. You're looking back, you're thinking about other things, the past and so on. And so I started out writing something that was a little bit of a letter to my younger self. And
Right.
then it just evolved from there and became more about female empowerment and women's stories. And I just had the best time. And once I sort of hooked up with Boo Hewardine, who produced the album, and he was really excited by the ideas, and he really helped me to sort of mold the concept and just really go with that theme, and we wrote some of the songs together in the end. So yeah, I had a bunch of women I wanted to write about. And I wrote loads of songs. There's loads that didn't make it onto the album, so I'd quite like to do something with those too. And there's a few women that I wrote about that I want to write more about because I just ended up going down these rabbit holes, you know. And some of them are obviously songs that are about me and my own experiences.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a bit about it's friendship, love, support, a collaboration. It's about motherhood. Um, it's about all of those things. Yeah.
And if you've got such a big selection of songs that you've written, how do you choose what makes the final cut? Is it how they work together? You take advice from Boo Dean or other people that you're collaborating with? How does it work?
Yeah, it's what's that expression about killing your babies or something?
Yeah,
Killing
it is. It is.
your
Yeah.
darling, whatever it is. It's hard because you really fall in love with these things and they're part of you. In the end, it comes down to quite practical choices, I think. And we rehearsed up the album before we went into the studio. We rehearsed up these songs. We had Adam Scott on bass, who I work with all the time, and John Rooney on guitar, who
Mhm.
I also work with all the time. But we also had Louis Abbott joined us for drums, and Louis was great because he was effectively an outsider coming in, but with so much amazing experience and
Yeah.
talent, and had lots of great sort of suggestions. So when we were in the rehearsal stage, and we were like, okay, we've got too many that sort of they don't sound the same, but they sort of occupy the same space, if you like, on the record. And it was like, how do you choose? And it sometimes did just come down to one person going, I think that one's just got that little bit there that's a bit, whatever it was, a little bit musical usually, because I think the stories were all as strong, but it was largely down to sort of musical decisions. So yeah, I have got a bunch of songs left, which is quite a nice prospect that I could go back to those and work with those in
That's a
future.
nice idea, almost trying them out before you put them on the album. Is that quite a common thing that people would do? I guess it is rehearsals.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, people do things so differently. I think, old school record making would have been, the whole band rehearsed and then they went in the studio and they all played together and that was what was the record, and you'd obviously do overdubs and stuff. And I think, you know, nowadays there's lots of ways to skin a cat. So some people might go in and just lay down drum tracks and then lay down bass, and then with this we wanted it to feel quite live, and so it was recorded that way. So it was rehearsed for almost a week, which we did in Boo's studio that he shares with Chris Drever and Finley Napier. So we were in that space, which was really lovely, because that building itself's got a lot of history. That was Blue Nile's room.
All right.
And Eddie Reed has recorded records there and stuff. So it felt really lovely being in that space. And obviously Boo's done, written God knows how many songs in there. So yeah, we did a lot of rehearsing. So by the time we went into the studio, we were ready to do it live, and then we did overdubs and things after that. But it was a nice way to work, really nice.
Yeah. I'd never thought about that, but if you're working in a space or rehearsing in a space which has got that kind of history, I've heard people saying it about Abbey Road, for instance. Does that feed in? Do you feel that? Do you think these were, you know, the walls reverberate with Paul Buchanan's vocals or something like that?
Absolutely, you really do. And it made me sort of want to hear more about it. So, you know, Mark Freegard was quite involved. He ended up not actively producing, because initially it was Mark that I spoke to about producing this record, and Mark then sort of brought Boo in, and then Mark had some family stuff going on, and it just ended up evolving, and we did it with Boo. But I feel like Mark's a part of the record, you know, and he's got lots of stories from working in that space. It was his studio for years.
Right.
That was Kyoto, I think it was called, and he had it. And yeah, you really feel that history, you know. And I don't know, I just sat there feeling a bit like, oh, you know, why am I'm here? This is mad, you know. How have I ended up in this space and with all this going on? So yeah, you do. I think you really do. It must be amazing to work at Abbey Road. Something like
Absolutely.
that. Like, wow.
And you mentioned there that you rehearsed them as live, and it's a live sounding album, and you're going to be launching it on May the 4th at the Panopticon. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so again, this all evolved as time went along, this whole concept, but I wanted to work in collaboration with some women involved with this record. And um, the cover of the record is a portrait painting of me by a good friend of mine, a portrait artist called Jo Richards. And we've been friends for a long time, and we talked about working together, and she offered to do this portrait, and it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible. And from that, I then started having this idea that it would be really lovely to have a painting for each song. And I know quite a few, lucky to know some really incredible artists. Another very close friend of mine, Lucy Campbell, is one of those. And so she's painting for Miniature Oceans. So yeah, it evolved. And so I started out thinking, oh, just a one or two. And then I was like, no, I'm going to go for it. Let's just have 12. So got chatting to various people, and they were all really into the idea. So then that became an art exhibition as well as a record launch. So it was like, how do you do that? Gallery space is quite expensive, and although I would have loved to have the art up for a whole week somewhere, it just wasn't affordable. So I went looking for somewhere that was a bit quirky as a venue, somewhere that's a bit interesting. And Panopticon, when I arrived there, I was just like, oh my God, this is just amazing. It's just full of history, and you know, it's apparently one of the world's oldest surviving musicals. So that's there in Glasgow, and it's been preserved very carefully and lovingly preserved by the people involved. Judith, who is the main lady that does that, and she's been really active in sort of bringing all the stories of the building as well. So there's lots of artifacts and things. It's just amazing. It's a beautiful space. I mean, it's got its quirks, so you can't play anything too loud, which the band is interesting, because of the plaster work being original, and they don't want to be vibrating that off the walls. You can't heat it. So it's ambient temperature, shall we say. Whatever's outside is what's inside, which at the moment's making me a bit nervous because winter doesn't seem to want to leave.
That's true.
But it's okay, it's fine. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful space. So yes, May the 4th, we'll be doing it there. We've got some special guests and we have got the artwork. So I'm hoping people will arrive nice and early, spend some time amongst the art, chat to the artists. Then we'll have a few other things and then we'll do our live performance, which will be quite an acoustic set, obviously. But it also means there's songs on the record that we haven't really been able to do yet for various reasons. So we're going to explore doing those ones,
It sounds amazing. And will the artwork be for sale? Is that the idea, that people can?
The artwork's for sale, and yeah, not all of the artists will be there, but quite a lot of the artists will be there. So yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping that they do sell. It'll be a lovely thing that work then goes out into the world and hangs on people's walls. Amazing.
I'm particularly looking forward to see what Ashley Cook's done, because she's a favourite of mine. I used to work with Ashley and her stuff's amazing.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I've already received Ashley's back and it's incredible. She's a really amazing artist and she's been really supportive, actually. She's helped me a lot with finding the venue and finding other people to do stuff. So yeah.
And the Panopticon, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I used to live around the corner from it and passed it most days and kind of knew that it's a little bit about its history, as in what it was used for. But just last week, I watched the programme and it was Susan Calman looking at various things in Glasgow, and one of them was the Panopticon, and its history is quite incredible.
Yeah.
Like, one of the reasons they didn't bring it down was because the floorboards had kind of been, people just used to wee where they stood back in the day. Yeah, no, and they had like the last, what unfortunately an un-PC we would call kind of freak shows, that, when it was, people like that. And then the First World War happened and people were coming back having lost limbs and things, and suddenly that just wasn't entertainment. I mean, it should never have been entertainment, of course. But there was this kind of, it's on Channel 5 to catch up with. I think you
I
would.
must check that out. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
It's
amazing.
incredible
Amazing.
history.
And as you say, the look of it is astonishing. It's like traveling back in time.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It really is. Yeah. So I'm hoping that people won't mind putting a coat on and coming in. Because it's worth it. I mean, there, like I said, there are quirks about putting on a show like that there, but it was just like, no, it's so right. And I won't say too much about it right now because I want it to be a bit of a thing on the night, but it has got connections to women, that building, and there's some stories. So we'll be exploring some of that too.
Absolutely. And you mentioned collaborations there, and one of them we're going to hear in a minute, Miniature Oceans featuring Emma Pollock. And how did that come about, working with Emma?
Well, we were recording at Chem19, which is obviously their studio. I've been a long fan of Emma's work and her voice. I just love her voice. And when I wrote that song, I wrote it sort of as a duet. I've got some early demos of it, and I listened to one the other day. It's really nice listening to stuff that, when you recorded it, how it's evolved. So I had thought, it'd be really nice to do that as a duet. And I'd said to Boo, I'd really like it to be Emma. Do you think, sort of thinking there's no way, and Boo was like, well, let's just ask. Like, you can only ask. What's the worst that can happen? She could say no, but she didn't. She said yes. And I think we gave her the original demo with me singing both parts, but then I was like, actually, what am I doing? Just you do whatever you want, because whatever you do is going to be amazing. And she was the one that decided not to sing all the way through, and just put it in the places that she did. And it just, I just love it. Yeah, absolutely love what she did with it.
It's a great track. It's the opening track in the album, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And the album's coming out with Last Night from Glasgow, and I think at the weekend you played their Weekender. Is that right?
I did, yeah. I opened it for them, actually. Yeah, it was great. Brilliant night. So Starless for headlining, launching their new album. So Paul worked very hard, Paul McGeechan, to get that all together for one show. It's quite something, with the orchestra and I don't know how many singers, 6 or 7. And they asked me to sing one song, which I sang an Emma Pollock song, because she sang on one of the previous albums. So I got to sing one of her songs, which was lovely. And yeah, and we opened, and because it was a nice big stage and you know a bigger show, we were able to get Louis on drums, and we had a woodwind section with
Oh,
us.
brilliant.
So that was really lovely, because there's a few songs on the record that have got woodwind. There's some brass as well, but we didn't do those songs. But having those bits filled in was just, oh, it was really lovely. So I'm hoping to do more shows with the woodwind. But yeah, it was a brilliant night, really lovely, great audience, really attentive. I think it might have been sold out. It certainly looked that way. It was really full.
I think it was sold out. In fact, I think it sold out pretty quickly. The Starless events, it must be huge to put on, because as you say, there's maybe about a dozen singers, maybe not as many as that, but it seems like that many, plus all the musicians, and they're really special nights. So I can imagine that would have been fantastic.
Yeah, it was magic, really lovely.
And are you going to be doing other live dates yourself later in the year? Is there more coming?
Yeah, I've got a few things. What have I got? Mine's gone blank. There's a few things. I've got a couple of sterling. There's a couple of things I haven't confirmed yet. And then there's a few that are smaller gigs. It'll probably be trio gigs, but I'm looking for bigger gigs that can accommodate all the bells and whistles. I want woodwind on everything now.
Is that right? You're addicted to wood.
Yeah, it was lovely playing with drums as well, which, you know, we make it work as a trio.
Yeah, you do.
But you know, when you've recorded something that's got drums and then you don't have them, it's just they've got a different feel, the songs, and I think they work. But it was really lovely to have the drums in there.
And if people want to come along on the 4th, where can they get tickets? Where's the best place?
Tickets are for sale on Last Night from Glasgow's website. So if you just search for me on there, you'll find them. Or you can go to all my socials. There's, you know, Instagram, there's a link in my bio and things like that. We're hoping it will sell out. So yeah, if people are interested, then I'd suggest grabbing a ticket soon. Yeah.
Well, everything I've heard about it, from the exhibition to where it is, for you guys playing these songs, it sounds like it's going to be a really, really special night.
Yeah, hopefully. Do you think you'll make it along, Ali?
I'm sure I will. I've got it in my diary.
Great.
Xan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's always good to catch up.
Lovely. Yeah, really nice to catch up with you too. Thanks for having me on.
And this is Xan Tyler and Emma Pollock and Miniature Oceans.